college football head coaches typically have a different swagger to them or a different personality that maybe you aren't expecting. And Joey McGuire definitely fits that category. And I really like what he's done with Texas Tech so far. I like the personality, the energy that he brings to Texas Tech and that program. And I think that we're in store for a really exciting year in 2024. We are going to deep dive into the Texas Tech Red Raiders and see what should we expect from this team this season. Before we do that, though, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, like the video, share the video. It goes a long way in supporting the channel as well as keeping this deep dive series going. So let's dive into Texas Tech. Both sides of the football should be interesting for the Red Raiders this year. Zach Kittley, obviously, everyone knows what he's capable of doing from his stop with Texas Tech, but also his previous stops as well. A very explosive offensive coordinator, someone who knows to get his players in good position. And then Tim DeRuyter on the defensive side of the ball, I think that he takes a step forward, or I should say the defense takes a step forward with him calling the shots. There's plenty of talent on both sides of the ball to be a better group and be better than what they were last year at 7-6. And I think this is a team that's building lots of momentum. Obviously, McGuire is the leader of that, and I really like where he's headed. I like his presence, both in person and on social media. Done a really good job of getting people to buy into Texas Tech, and it's easy to see why certain players and certain people gravitate towards him. And even with some of the players that they lost, you brought in some talent to replace them, and there's some exciting things happening on the recruiting trail as well. But we'll start with the transfer portal because I think that Texas Tech did a really good job of bringing in impact players and instant impact players. Now, what degree those players will be, we're not sure yet, but you have plenty of potential. We'll start with the wide receiver position because you bring in two players in Caleb Douglas and Josh Kelly that should play right away. Caleb Douglas, if you watched his time at Florida, there wasn't a ton of data points to utilize, but he is someone who's an athletic player who can make some big time catches. That's really exciting for a Texas Tech offense that lost a couple players to the transfer portal and needs some wide receivers to step up. Caleb Douglas can be that guy. Josh Kelly comes from Washington State, former Fresno State transfer as well. Veteran player who understands how to win in his routes, understands how to get open, and now joins an offense that will put him in an even better position to do that. He did. I think Washington State's offense was good for him, but I think that Texas Tech also brings a lot to the table for his skill set as well. You also bring in Mikal Harrison Pilot from Houston, someone who maybe isn't going to play right off the bat, but someone to keep an eye on for the future. The offensive line also gets Vinny Sciuri from Toledo, and you also get Davion Carter from Memphis. So again, you have plenty of options, whether that's on the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball. I think that this team did a great job. This coaching staff did a great job of bringing in talent to, like I said, compete right away, potentially start right away. And the offensive side of the ball, I think, brought in some more of those guys. But you have a couple guys on the defense side of the ball that could also do that as well. We'll dive into more of those guys later. You lose Tyler Shuck. I think that's not really a surprise to a lot of people, especially with what you have coming back at the quarterback position. Also, the health of Shuck was always going to be a concern, and I don't think that ever improved for the Red Raiders. So you move on from that. Monroe Mills at tackle. That's obviously not a huge loss with what you have coming back, but still definitely a noticeable loss. Miles Price and Jerron Bradley at the wide receiver position. We mentioned them earlier. So you've lost certain players on the offensive side of the ball that will definitely be noticeable. But again, if Caleb Douglas and Josh Kelly do what they're capable of doing, then I don't think you really notice much at that position. Also, the offensive line should be set. And the secondary is probably the one that will be affected the most, but only because if you lost a couple players that are now in the NFL. We'll start with the offense though, as usual, and this is an offense that should be fun with one big asterisk next to it. Baron Morton must stay healthy. That is the most obvious thing if you're a Texas Tech fan. You know what is at stake and you know what's required if you're going to be a competitive team in the Big 12. Baron Morton must stay healthy. It sounds like he's going to be coming into the season, and if he is, great. Problem is that what do you have behind him that can step up. You have Cameron Brown coming in from the transfer portal. Jake Strong returns as well, but none of them have the ceiling we've seen so far as Baron Morton. Healthy Baron Morton is going to be fun. Last year, not being fully healthy, 1,700 yards, 15 touchdowns. When he is fully healthy, he is a gunslinger. He's a perfect fit in Zach Hitley's system, and he'll bring this offense to new heights if he's able to stay on the field. That's probably the biggest thing is if Baron Morton can stay on the field, you're looking at a guy who is very confident to throw the football now after his experience that he's seen on the field. And he is someone that can make this offense much better because of his arm talent. He's a smart player who can get the ball to his playmakers. And with some of the players we just talked about, he has plenty of options. You have plenty of talented players to throw the football to this year. And this is going to be an offense that improves. This was a group that finished largely in the 60s for most of their statistical categories here. So you're hoping that the passing attack takes a step forward, but consistency, I should say, at the quarterback position, not just from completing passes, but the fact that it's going to be the same guy is probably more important to me than at least right off the bat than what it's going to mean with X's and O's. Obviously, that comes with it, but if you can keep Baron Morton healthy, if you find a way to keep him on the field, this offense is going to be super fun to watch if you're a Texas Tech fan and a nightmare to watch if you're an opposing team. Joining him in the backfield, this rushing attack should be just fine. Taj Brooks decided to return. That was one of the more surprising returnees in the Big 12, especially after a 1,500-yard year, 10 touchdowns. You have a guy who is a proven commodity for this rushing attack, and you also have guys behind him that give them depth. Cameron Valdez is back. They convinced him to stay. That was a huge win for this program. 286 yards and one touchdown last year. So again, not going to be a starter, but definitely part of this rotation. We'll definitely see plenty of time on the field. And then you also have Cameron Dickey, a freshman that is really doing a lot of good things for this program. This coaching staff likes what he's capable of doing. And again, if this passing attack can't be consistent, they should feel pretty good about what the rushing attack brings to the table. Taj Brooks is an explosive player, a guy who, like I said, rushed for over 1,500 yards. So he's doing something right. The offensive line is doing something right. And if you're not able to find consistency in the passing attack, you at least know you have that in the rushing attack this year. The pass catchers for Baron Morton or whoever the quarterback is going to be, we talked about two of them already. Caleb Douglas, like I said before, Caleb is going to be one of those guys that can jump out of the gym. If go back and watch the Florida Utah game and watch what he did in that game, that is something he's capable of doing. And at 6'4, 205, it's easy to see why. He has the athleticism, he has the size to win those 50-50 balls. And now he gets a chance to catch more passes than he did at Florida. Josh Kelly is a natural in this system, pretty much comes from the same system at Washington State. So you know that he's going to catch on really quick. 923 yards and 8 touchdowns with the Cougars last year. Coy Eakin returns. A lot of people, especially in the college football fantasy community, expect him to have a big year, 416 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, someone needs to step up and play a more prominent role because of some of the departures that are now gone. And those are three options. Behind them, though, there is plenty of talent. So this is not a group that can just sit around and expect, okay, well, I have time to figure it out. Nope, not the case. McRae, excuse me, is back. 255 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now that he has his feet set a little bit more after transferring last year into the program, he'll be really fun. Freshman Micah Hudson really sent waves through this program. They were really excited to get him a big time commit for Texas Tech. Expect him to be a contributor right off the bat. Jordan Brown, 256 yards and 1 touchdown, should be a contributor as well. And then there's the tight end position, a tight end position that is full of potential talent and proven talent as well. Mason Tharp comes in 6'9", 270 pounds. So if you need a bigger target, I don't really know what to tell you. You're probably not a Division I quarterback if you can't get the ball to Mason Tharp. At least get it in his general vicinity. 178 yards and 4 touchdowns. Expect those numbers to increase. The one thing that you'll say is maybe they won't because you have Jalen Conyers coming in from Arizona State, a proven weapon for the Sun Devils. Decided he needed a change. Joins a interconference team in Texas Tech. So he'll be someone that will contribute as well. John Carlos Miller comes in from Elon, 453 yards and 4 touchdowns for the tight end position. So you have good depth at the tight end position as well. You have plenty of options at wide receiver. So there's really no reason for Texas Tech fans to be concerned. You just have to find the right combination of guys. And honestly, the offense should be just fine. There's not really any concerns in terms of your options. It just maybe is a concern of one, what's the ceiling and can you be consistent enough? Some of that has to do with quarterback position, obviously, but you shouldn't have a worry if you're looking for a number of players to step in and contribute right away. The offensive line obviously play a huge role for this offense as well. And you have some good talent coming back. You also brought in some solid talent to contribute as well. So you have Sterling Porcher will take over one of the tackle positions coming in from Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is honestly an underrated team. The number of players that they produce in the transfer portal to bigger programs should be at least noted. Vinny Scary, we talked about before, coming in from Toledo, 38 games of experience, played on a team that competed for the MAC championship last year. Davion Carter is kind of a flexible option here. You could see him at guard, you could see him on center. An undersized player at 6 feet, 295 pounds, could also rotate with Sheridan Wilson at the center position, could also rotate with some of these guys at the guard position as well. So he was a good addition to me through the transfer portal, gives you a little bit of depth, can also back up Caleb Rogers at the right guard position. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on there. Experienced player, very talented player. I Buchanan takes on a new role at the right tackle position. You also have Dalton Merriman as an option on the right side as well. Merriman comes in at 6'9", 305. Buchanan stands 6'6", 310. So you have not as much experience at the right tackle position, but you also have potential. I think the staff really likes what they have and likes the depth that they have behind them. We mentioned Sean Wilson before. Davion Carter is a depth piece. Maurice Rodriguez is another player to keep an eye on when we talked about Merriman as well. So this feels like a good group. And again, this is an offense that finished in the 60s for most of their statistical categories. But I think that this is a group that could take a step forward and be a much improved group in 2024. Health will be a big concern for a lot of these units. But if you're able to stay healthy, Texas Tech could surprise a lot of people. Flipping to the defensive side of the ball, this is another group that is probably going to fly under the radar because of where they finish in the 60s to 80s. But again, 60 to 80s is not really that bad. You just need one of your units to step up a little bit more than last year. The offense could take a step forward. The defense is kind of on that same trajectory as well. You just have some new faces taking over on defense. Texas Tech defensive line will be kind of a little bit different group this year, but still plenty of talent. Isaac Smith is listed as a linebacker, but is probably going to play on the edge for Texas Tech this year. And kind of see why 6'6", 260 is just nuts. The fact that they have a player like that, I think says a lot about what this team has done to recruit and get certain guys that have certain frames to step up. That's really exciting. Joseph Adedier is someone who will be kept an eye on that other side of Smith. So you have two guys that are explosive on the edge, but you just have to see them be more disruptive. Charles Esters behind Smith, I should say, and Dylan Spencer, another unproven guy who has just 4 tackles under his belt. You have options. It's just unproven options. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. If you're able to be more disruptive than you were last year, this is going to be the group that does it. This defensive line that needs to step up in a big way. You have talent behind you, but you can't expect them to do everything. You need to be disruptive. You need to find a way to get to the quarterback and also find a way to be, like I said, more disruptive and eat up blocks so that things behind you are a little bit easier for the linebackers that are waiting for those guys. At the tackle positions, you're looking at, again, guys that aren't going to fill up the stat sheet, but that's the nature of the position. And if you know anything about nose tackle or defensive tackle, you know that these guys don't exactly get the love they deserve. They're the guys that eat up blocks. A guy like Quincy Ledet is going to get less recognition than the linebackers because he is going to have to command double teams. And if he is getting that, he's not going to get to the ball carrier. He's not going to get the tackles. He's not going to be disruptive. A guy like Amorian Banks could be a little bit more, I think, a little lighter, someone who at 6'5", 305 could be more disruptive than his partner there. But you look at what they have coming back. I really like this tandem. I think that they're going to be a solid group. And you look at what they have behind them too. The Braylon Carroll comes in from Rice, someone who had a productive year with the Owls and could be in that rotation as well. You also have Jaden Cofield, a guy who is not as experienced as these guys, one tackle under his belt last year. So this is going to be a new group, a very green group, someone, or I should say, a group that needs to step up, but they should feel pretty good about what they have behind them. If they don't have to worry about being right all the time, they don't have to be perfect because the guys behind them are ready to take a step forward and step up if they need to. But you would like to see this defensive line be disruptive and take things away from the opposing offense. But if not, the linebacker position has proven that they are capable of making plays. Ben Roberts and Jacob Rodriguez are two guys that come back that everyone knows. And when you look at what they're capable of doing, Roberts obviously stands out 107 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, one interception, two forced fumbles. He is the leader of this defense. There is no real dispute about it. He is someone who is a proven playmaker, someone who can get to the ball carrier and clean up when necessary. Rodriguez, a little bit less productive, but still 32 tackles, one tackle for loss, two passes defended, one interception, one fumble recovery, two forced fumbles. Someone who knows how to get the ball back to his offense. And if he can do that a little bit more, that gives this offense that we just talked about lots of potential in that group. They are capable of making big plays, and it'll be fun to see what this defense can do to help that offense as well. The guy that I think is going to get under the spotlight quite a bit is AJ McCarty. Now, maybe it's someone like Brendan Jordan behind him that steps up and is playing the star role, that linebacker safety hybrid position. So we'll see what happens there. But you could put them in the secondary, you can put them at linebacker, it doesn't really matter. Everyone knows that Roberts and Rodriguez, what they're capable of doing, but now you have a guy who's playing more of that hybrid role. You're going to be covering a variety of different skill sets, a variety of different frames. McCarty plays a big role in this defense. The star position is going to be vital for the success of this team. And like I said, Tim DeRuyter is going to have to find ways to make this group more disruptive because if that group up front can do that, that makes the life of the secondary a little bit easier. And this is a group that's going to be inexperienced at certain positions. Braylon Lux comes back, the former Fresno State transfer, is set to have another good year. 40 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 9 passes defended, one interception. Someone who I think was a little bit of a surprise to Texas Tech fans. They didn't expect him to come from Fresno State from the Group of Five level and compete right away, and he surprised a lot of people and made his presence known. CJ Baskerville is coming back for another year. He's an experienced player, 78 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, two interceptions. He will be the leader of this secondary along with Lux. The other two positions, though, is where things get interesting because you have Chapman Lewis joining Baskerville at safety, and you have Maurian Horn, who has 4 tackles last year, coming in at the cornerback position. When you look at the talent that they lost at this in this group, you're going to lose quite a bit of talent, and that's going to affect this group. But you have talent behind them. Lewis and Horn obviously need some time to get acclimated to this group and to this roster and see what they can do, what they're capable of doing. But I also like what this staff has done to create depth. Granted, you have plenty of inexperience. Jalen Wilcox is a redshirt freshman. Jordan Sanford had 9 tackles last year. Those are the two safeties that will probably figure into the rotation. Jalen Peoples, 4 tackles. And then you bring in Devin Cromwell, transfer from Canada. That should be a cornerback that might contribute as well. So you just have a lot of unknowns outside of Lux and Baskerville. So I don't know if you necessarily have to be concerned if you're a Texas Tech fan, but you just have to keep in mind that it might be a little bit before this secondary is up to speed. That's what makes the front group so important because if they're disruptive and they're making life easier on the secondary, that builds confidence in guys like Lewis and Horn. It gives them less time to cover their guys and it gives them more confidence that they are going to be able to make plays and they can trust what their teammates are doing to help them out as well. Again, this is a defense that needs to take a step forward, a defense that is going to face plenty of challenging offenses and a variety of different looks from those offenses. So if you find a way to build confidence early, especially on defense, you're going to be in good hands. Strengths of this team shouldn't be too surprising. Linebacker is going to be a strength. Roberts and Rodriguez are solid. You could also do half of the secondary as strengths with Baskerville and Lux, but that's probably going to be, especially the depth, going to be a concern. Baron Martin is a concern and a strength to me. A healthy Baron Martin is a strength. A injured Baron Martin or one that struggles with injuries is a concern. That really disrupts what Texas Tech is going to do. Maybe Cameron Brown is better than what we anticipate, but that's going to be probably the biggest X factor to me. Martin's health is going to be an X factor. If he stays healthy, you're in good hands. If he doesn't stay healthy, you have a lot of concerns. You have concerns about what this offense is capable of doing. That being said, running back and receiver are a strength. Tight end could probably also be a strength, to be completely honest. Defensive line is a concern, but only because they're so green and need time to establish their identity. So if you're able to do that early and often, then less of a concern. But there's plenty of concerns on this team that could also be strengths eventually. You just have to find ways to get to that point. Now, when you look at the schedule, to me, it's going to be a schedule that's full of challenges. And there's a variety of different things that this group has to navigate. But I also think that this is a group that's capable of winning 10 football games this year. If you're able to get certain aspects of your team up to speed or build that confidence, this is a team that is very capable of winning 10 football games. The floor to me is 6-6. I think Joey McGuire has done a great job of building this program to a point where you raise that floor. That's probably the biggest thing with Joey McGuire is that you're going to find that your bad seasons aren't too terrible. Now it's all relative because college football fans will be pretty upset if you're 6-6 for some seasons, but that is good when you're looking at especially the depth of this conference. So an over under of 7.5 wins, you probably feel pretty good about betting the over if you're going to bet that. But again, this is going to be an interesting schedule to navigate. Abilene Christian, no real concerns there, obviously. That Washington State is a very tricky game. You're going on the road to a team that we're not really sure what to expect. And also, when your quarterback and his health are concerned, you just don't really know what's going to happen. So a trip to Washington State could be tough. That's a game that Texas Tech should win, though. I think that they are a better team. They have more talent. And that should, like I said, that should be a win despite it being on the road. North Texas at home is sneaky difficult, but also I think that Texas Tech is a much better position than North Texas. Arizona State at home, kind of the same thing. Cincinnati at home. So 4 of your first 5 games are at home. That should help you build plenty of momentum. And a 5-0 start is not out of the question. At Arizona could be tricky. Arizona is probably the most volatile team in terms of the Big 12 because of their team that could compete for a conference championship, but they're also going through a coaching change and lost quite a bit of talent. So they could take a step back. You just never know. That's a game that, despite being on the road, Texas Tech can win, but it's going to be tricky. Baylor should be a win at home, but again, Baylor is a team that is kind of playing with their backs against the wall, so you just don't know. 2 tricky road games at TCU and at Iowa State. Those are games that are not going to be easy, especially if TCU can take that step that a lot of people expect them to. So keep an eye out for that. But again, Texas Tech is kind of in that similar boat where they're ready to take a step forward. Iowa State on the road is always tough. I don't care who you are. Winning in Ames is not easy. And this is going to be a fun game to watch, especially if Texas Tech is playing at the level close to that 10-2 ceiling. We'll see what happens with that. Colorado at home, we'll find out pretty quickly if Colorado is actually better or if they're just more of the same as what we saw last year. But Colorado is definitely a team capable of making a bowl game, and that offense should be electric. So that will put a lot of pressure on this defense. At Oklahoma State, always tough to beat the Cowboys. They're going to be a contender this year, as will Texas Tech. And that's what also makes the West Virginia game kind of difficult as well. You have a number of teams that could compete for the Big 12 championship. Obviously, towards the end of the season, we're going to know which team is which. But I think at the end of the day, this is a tricky schedule, but also at the same time, it's a schedule that's very manageable at times. You get that 5-0 start, you're looking at a team that's playing with a ton of confidence. That means either Baron Morton is playing lights out or they figured out how to manage his injury situation. There's a backup, if it's Brown or whoever, They figured it out. So that's something to keep an eye on. But there's a lot of reasons to be excited for Texas Tech. This is a group that should trust what their coach is doing. They should trust the strengths that they have and figure out how to make their concerns into strengths, or at least just mitigate the damage that maybe some of those groups will do. It's a young group at certain positions, but I like the talent that they have. Again, Joey McGuire has done a great job bringing in talent, whether that's recruiting, whether it's the transfer portal. I think the Hudson addition could start a lot of good things for Texas Tech. And when it all comes down to it, Texas Tech is a team that, yes, could win 10 games. They could also win six. But I think you have to be excited about what the long term trajectory of this team is going forward.